Welcome everybody, the panelists and our attendees online. I am Mila Popovic and I am a fellow and trustee of the World Academy of Art and Science and currently appointed Director General at the government of Montenegro, leading a new institution that's called Directorate for Interculturalism at the Ministry of Human Rights, Human and Minority Rights. I am mentioning that because you can imagine that being an independent academic, artist, and activist prior to taking on this role, I was focused exactly on the topic of today. How do we indeed activate a global social transformation? And because of that, I took on the role in the government, changing hats and trying to build bridges between the civic engagement and the governance policies. So this in and of itself is introduction of myself, along with an introduction of a pathway, if you will, a methodology, a personal strategy that I took on as a professional to see how I can build bridges and how I can, from different registers of society and different registers of impact, I can in fact connect initiatives and this impulse towards social transformation. So what I would like to do is to quickly set a stage for this conversation, where I would like to paint a quick picture of the state of affairs, if you will, and the state of arts, if you will, in conjunction in the world. On the one hand, as everything that has been discussed earlier, that is a threat to our peace, personal and collective, has been a convergence of existential risks. And we don't need to number them now here. We all know what they are. But the point is that they are not a list. They are converging phenomena that are multiplying and accelerating and intensifying the effect of each other. That's a key thing to think about. On the other hand, we have the convergence of technological advance, scientific discoveries and technological advance. And I will mention them as different grades of AI, as synthetic biology, mixing of species, as nanotechnology, as also longevity studies and transhumanism. Again, discoveries and advents that are in convergence, multiplying, intensifying, and accelerating their effects. So between those two, what I have called before the Scylla and Charybdis of our own development and of our own labor of our minds, to hearken back to what Einstein was saying, with that the fruit of our labor of scientific discovery should be the benefit and the boon and the blessing of humanity, and not the curse and the destruction of humanity. Harkening back to what was shared with us 65 years ago, and what we started with in the Academy, the foundational philosophy, vision and values of the Academy is to call to social responsibility of science at the crossroads, historical crossroads of Cold War and possibility of nuclear war. We are again today at the civilizational as planetary beings, as global citizens, we are again at the crossroads of to be or not to be. Between these two convergences, what I am claiming is everything rests on social cohesion, trust, universal human rights and responsibilities, and universal humanistic values to ethically guide the scientific and technological advance to solve our existential risks in order for us to create a new social contract of values that will determine the price and worth and value of everything, and that will guide the new paradigm of human development. In other words, what we need is the aesthetic, ethical, and ecological code to guide our technological advance, to engender, in other words, the social transformation that will unavoidably be a cultural transformation, to guide a culture that will guide that transformation for us to utilize and engage the evolutionary potential of technology to create this beneficial, truly progressive, truly inclusive new paradigm of human development. From there, I would like to, I have already shared with you the question on how we can utilize, engage the evolutionary potential of technology to, in other words, engender a new culture, or in reverse also in a two-way looping back effect of creation. What kind of culture do we need to create in order to guide the evolutionary potential of technology to engender and enact and envision global social transformation? Big question, but I know that every single one of you has already worked on this, has already generated initiatives, strategies, pathways to do this. So I'm kindly asking you to share with us your experiences, to share initiatives, solutions on how we can propel and engage a cultural shift that needs to happen for social transformation. Towards that goal, should I say, I would like to invite first Elena to speak, and then we'll take a full round of insight and engage the audience.
Thank you. It really is a very big question that is being asked. But as somebody who has been trying to translate social science into praxis on the ground for 35 years now, I like to stay away from big words and really become very concrete in trying to address your big and the panel's big question. So for me, as the panel says, the long, slow process of subconscious evolution through millennia will no longer suffice. It is the conscious knowledge of the collective evolutionary process that is the key ingredient in the response to our rapidly deepening global turbulence. The conscious knowledge of the collective evolutionary process. Let's be very clear, such knowledge not only does not currently exist in our educational system, but it requires significant cognitive and emotional developmental shift in ordinary people, which needs to be both explained, cultivated, and then systematically supported. So if we are serious about cultivating peace on the ground, we have no less than that challenge in front of us. And as it was mentioned very clearly and beautifully on the first panel yesterday, it is the internal crisis that we have to resolve. What does that mean? Well, we know very well that our collective cultures right now vacillate between power and control, conformity, and achievement and prosperity, very materialistically understood. And there is a clash between these different cultures, but none of them actually are able to speak to or try to speak to the evolutionary process that we're in. So what is really needed here? There's so much talk about technology now, but I'd like to keep it simple. Technology can significantly enable the cognitive and emotional developmental shift needed by supporting the massive spread of online courses which educate people in every profession and at every educational level on the root causes and drivers of global turbulence, and also, and even more importantly, on the dynamic interdependence between the social, economic, and biosphere problems that every human is experiencing right now. So this is a systemic and global educational endeavor that can do what Stephen Hartman was speaking about as founding executive director of Bridges Sustainability Coalition yesterday, when he said what is most needed is feeding processes that build agency and empowerment. But these processes require a systematic educational intervention because, again, I didn't speak much about my background, but my background is in adult development and in consciousness development. And I know that these things don't just happen. They have to be educated, they have to be cultivated, they have to be supported. So to the extent that ordinary people grasp this dynamic interdependence, between the social, the natural, and economics as well. They also develop competencies and skills to participate in creating the new and more humane entities and organizational structures that will assist conscious social evolution. And let's face it, currently, no citizen and no politician is actually prepared to know how to face the dizzying force of the emergent global transformation. There's no training for that. People are not prepared. We talk about the degradation of political leadership, but the reality is that the evolutionary force is gaining momentum so rapidly that people are really not prepared to deal with it so well. Hence the role of a vast-scale transdisciplinary educational campaign that needs to be recognized and urgently responded to. And I'd like to be brief here to allow for time for discussion. So as a very quick example, just wanted to share that, as some of you know, I am a new fellow of the World Academy, but I have worked with the Academy for a couple of years now and have created in Sofia, Bulgaria, a transdisciplinary institute for consciousness, society, and well-being, which is trying to do exactly that, to overcome the siloed academic and other education that is still the reality and the standard, and to develop institute courses that engage professionals from every public and private sphere and exploring the inner and outer dynamics of our times and the opportunities that these inner and outer dynamics present for each of us. So far, the courses have been very successful. People respond surprisingly well. This really, to me, is a very concrete intervention that moves us towards transforming turbulence into conscious social evolution. And as was discussed at yesterday's series of panels, a vision-driven approach is needed in order to create a global culture and architecture of conscious interdependence and regenerative restructuring of social, economic, and natural systems. This kind of scaled endeavor, in the view of many, is the best response to the forces of the old world of corporate empire building and the rule of might. So I think I'll stop here so that we can discuss. Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you very much, Elena. This is excellent. You focused on education, vast-scale training programs, global cultural creation that needs to be disseminated. And these are specific proposals that I would also like to hear from everybody, as we agreed on at the beginning. So, Stefan, you have worked for a long while now on very powerful initiatives that you disseminated through the World Academy. But I'm sure that with the new developments on the global scale recently, you must have advanced your own work towards the global social transformation that you started with transformation of finance.
First of all, I would like to thank Mila for inviting me to this panel, Gary for making this GA, again, a feast of thoughts and a community of committed people. It was probably so far one of the best GIs I've ever attended. And special thanks to all the WAAS support team, kind of the invisible hand behind that makes it all possible. Without them, the entire agenda wouldn't work. Okay. Let's focus from my side as a shrink on 7 aspects of a social theory of development, a conscious social theory of development. And I think there's at least 9 components which are of relevance. The first one is we have to be aware that any ontogenetic individual development should match with a phylogenetic development, and they basically follow a fractal order. Second, social development follows emergent structures and not linear ones. Third, we should watch out for unintended consequences we generate through our narrow-minded consciousness. Whenever we evolve, we should start honoring the given, criticize what is left, transcend towards a greater whole. And we should watch out for individual fallacy and look out for an upgrade of the institutional design, meaning trying to come up with new incentives, new ways of how we're dealing with systemic issues. Any social theory of development should further face collective taboos and shadows. AI is one of them at the moment we're facing, how to manage. The other one, I think, from my perspective and my understanding, is the money system. Okay, we're not consciously aware of what's happening there. Seventh, every trend we're looking at, it's supposed to be inclusive, more holistic, diverse, and more human-centered. And anytime, as Gary said in his plenary session yesterday morning, anytime transformation gets too fast, where we're not able to include the majority of the world population, we are experiencing sorts of regression, sorts of dissociation, and sorts of projection, right? And finally, I think when we're talking about a conscious social development, it's about having the right narrative in your brain, in your mind, having the right mindset. And the mindset that helps me coming up with the right vision and the right mission is the picture of the staircase, right? We are stepping up or down a staircase. This can be consciously done along these 9 components. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stefan. This was always very systematic from you. I mean, I know you typically speak about the money as, in other words, making money conscious. That's a very powerful thought. How to make money conscious and how to use money as a currency, as a token of social trust and exchange, token of social exchange and dialogue in so many ways, of exchange of values, what it truly should be used consciously and conscientiously. So let us go back to that. I really appreciate that you were very mindful of time. So I would like now to call on Alison, who has been working exactly on mobilizing social forces through her own unique way of spreading the thought of interdependence, of which Elena was speaking about, as the key driver. Key, I always say, scientific and spiritual, to unite the knowledge, understanding and knowledge and wisdom that all beings, all life forms, and all phenomena are interdependent. If all of our systems are based and built on that knowledge, what would they look like? And this is what Alison's unique take is on how to mobilize people, power, and perspectives and all the social forces towards the global social transformation. Welcome, Alison.
Thank you so much, Mila, Gary, and happy birthday. None of you look 65, much younger. Who could forget this? And who would like to? In 2020, the world went to a masquerade party no one wished to attend. COVID etched one more trauma into civilization's scar tissue. From pandemic to war to environmental breakdown and more, the global body is ill. A global identity crisis akin to World War We and an AI culture that vivifies this. Paranoia is rising, paradigms are dying, and this pendulum swing of death and rebirth mode is overwhelming. We need decompression mode, and perspective is now everything. But we've lost our North Star. Visions obscured by chaotic misinformation, disinformation, and the panic we're now in. We're hurting. We need healing the troubled human condition from its root system. Thus far, man-made or natural catastrophe rallies the global dysfunctional family. We need to get our act together before its Act 3 finale. Extraordinary solutions are everywhere. They're bursting across the worldwide spectrum, yet they're siloed in sectors. They're segregated, and they need amplifying and a spellbinding context that unifies them. Meanwhile, phenomenal technological innovations are accelerating beyond our capacity to integrate, and our biological humanity is now at stake. So building resilient societies is more than just mechanics. Humanity and technology need to dance together. Climate change has brought us to our knees, changing the overheated emotional climate can bring us to our senses. Babies kicking up a storm and avoiding a breach depends upon midwifing humanity in sanity through cohesion, not division. When an individual body gets ill, we seek medical help. Same when our cars break down and we get a tune-up, or our computers with a reboot. Same with the global body. And absent of relief, epochs of accumulated dis-ease now explode across embittered populations. As above, so below? Hopefully, no. Columbus departed the old world only to discover it was not the only world, and that the new world was inhabited. Just 100 kilometers due north of my head and all of ours lies another vast foreign landscape, space. Promise looms, so does hazard in a Wild West terrain far beyond our comprehension, and one that we risk making the same mistakes in, except this time, who knows what other non-terrestrial cultures we might be disrespecting or disrupting. Exploration, that's our life force, but without humility, it becomes a nemesis, driving this mess of our humanness. Technology itself isn't bad. It's just that we're so divorced from our humanity that it's becoming a replacement rather than a comrade. It's stealing the spotlight on the stage of life. Why? Why do we so loathe ourselves that we give away our starring roles, our divine power base? When enough people feel hopeless, helpless, purposeless, self-worthless, emotional states metastasize into nation states, which become prey to power plays, which ultimately affect everybody when waves of desperate war, climate, or economic refugees suddenly arrive at our own shrinking doorsteps, and the good neighbor policy rapidly evaporates. You think we have problems with aliens? Try the alienated state of our world. The global body is a metaphor for a human body. Arm is not a leg, is not a head, any more than an Asia is an America, is a Europe or Africa, nor should they be. Each individual part is both star and interdependent co-star in maintaining our healthy overall performance on the stage of life. So why would an arm attack its leg, attack its head? And how can global bodies survive, much less thrive, under the weight of perpetual self-inflicted wounding? How we use our minds becomes key. Thus far, it's using us and driving us crazy. Yet that's our fertile crescent, the birthplace of humanity insanity. It's also the birthplace of our discontent and disconnect from self, other, and something greater that's creating humanity's insanity. Where are the safeguards to protect our creativity, our divinity, the essence of our humanity? Humanity insanity is a brand worth investing in, nurturing, disarming, and partying for. No, not party politics. No, not party divides. It is time for disarmament of a breathtaking kind. Nothing to do with warring nation states, everything to do with enriching our emotional states. From AI to HI, artificial intelligence. Let's apply the wizardry of technology to the wonders of humanity in every sentient being and showcase this face of our global selfie from its good side in real time for the very first time to remind us. Let's dance together, take center stage together, and remember who's the true star, lest AI try to steal the spotlight and cast us off this wondrous stage of life. We can't wait for wars to dissipate, climate to cooperate, to roll out the ammo. It's time to mobilize the troops and override fear-based media marketing with out-of-this-world party planning. It's time to coalesce the power of our imaginations across every culture, sector, and generation and use technology to facilitate this. From AI to HI, it's time to get high on life and gift-wrap this planet in bold inspiration. Time to avert a sixth mass extinction event with a sixth mass evolution event. The world's a mess and we need a miracle. Let's have a party and party plan the miraculous. Consider this. Party vibes date back to ancient times, circa 3000 BCE, honoring cities like Dionysia, ancient Greece, deities, ancient Rome, community, Heb, Heb in Egypt. They celebrated harvests, bounties, or warded off evil spirits. In today's vernacular, we might ask the gods for forgiveness, given the gods of industry seem to have forsaken us. In other words, it's a form of community bonding, desperately missing in today's fractured world. What Mesopotamia is to the Fertile Crescent, our heart-centered minds are to our human essence, and Earth to the universe. So how about honoring the cradle of our all-encompassing cosmic civilization with captivating amazement and use of tech to facilitate this? If the Amazon is lungs of the world, arts and culture are the heartbeat of humanity. Their social impact can't be overstated, though even notables like Woodstock and Live Aid are no longer adequate. We're convulsing in birth contractions, desperate for hope, depression's an epidemic, and the one industry outpacing the military-industrial complex, the wellness industry by 3-to-1 ratio or thereabouts. So great global reset needs a great shift in mindset about the world around us, within us, and worlds beyond us. From entertainment to tourism to environmental health and planetary beautification, from culinary arts to cultural fashion to feats of sports, consciousness, science, and well-being, let's champion the ultimate stimulus package and launch a worldwide party industry. And let's do so making history in synchronicity with Synchronistory, a phenomenal music-powered party for the planet, celebrating every sentient being, broadcast live from multiple event sites worldwide and space, biennially. I've been party planning nearly 40 years. Timing's everything, divine timing.
Thank you, Alison.
In conclusion, I just want to say love is the universal language, music is the portal, and aided by technology, Synchronistory offers a spectacularly enduring vessel. The human conditions operating system needs to now run on love. Thank you for your indulgence in hearing
Thank you,
me.
Alison. Thank you so much. She has, as you understood, a whole vision of how things can be organized to mobilize the social force, as we have done it before through Woodstock, Live Aid, and on. It is apparent to all three of the speakers, through everything that we have heard from all three speakers, that we're asking for a cultural change through a narrative. Elena spoke about that. Stefan also spoke about that. Alison certainly spoke about that, about a new story that needs to be told and that needs to be disseminated, subscribed to, and propelled and lived as a sublimation of all of our rights, responsibilities, and the rights to fulfillment and the rights to realizing our potential on this planet in this lifetime. As a sublimation of it comes the idea of Alison's to create a planetary party, which is right on point, because it seems to, according to all the trends and the development with the technology, we are bound to enter the era of experiential economy. With that being said, it's the grand narrative that has been preoccupying our next speaker, Lawrence Ford, who has always worked between on the correlation between the inner world and the outer world, the correlation between the inner transformation and the macrocosm and the macro story and the macro narrative that we're living collectively. Lawrence, please.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for these wonderful comments thus far, and congratulations to 65 years of deep, meaningful work for the Academy, and it's an honor to be part of this. I will be very brief because I'm excited to get into a dialogue here with my esteemed colleagues. I am coming to you from the middle of, this is perfect because I'm coming to you from the middle in a boat in the middle of the Gulf of, I'm not sure if it's the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America, but that will define the speed of our change these days. I think my internet is stable enough to hang in here with everybody, so thank you for putting up with us. I want to start with just a little bit of a story. If we go back to many of our listeners and my esteemed panelists may recall a famous picture taken in Manhattan in 1900. And it was a shot down the street of Manhattan, and it was 99% horses everywhere. And 13 years later, there was one horse in all cars. Now, back in those days, that was very fast change before technology and all of the tools we have today for speed. And the fascinating thing for me when I look at history is, guess what all the experts were focused on back then? Literally horse shit. They were focused on the big manure crisis. How do we design better shovels? How do we regulate these issues to get rid of all of this manure? And that to me is a wonderful, wonderful story of where we are today as humanity, as we're moving deeply into the death of the age of knowledge, where intellect and information was prime. All of our credentials and all of the schools we went to that leveraged everything we had to rehash information. It is history. It is a fascinating time to be alive. And so my calling is, Mila, to your point, and to the essence of this session, is we do need something different to mean, something we can all get behind. Because what artificial intelligence is doing for us today, and here's a shameless plug, as I write about in my book that's coming out in December 7th of this year, is really the fact that it is shifting everything exponentially, and it is a mirror of our core systems-based thinking and programming that it's putting back to us. It's not doing anything to us. It's showing us what we've created with all of our incentives itself. And it's going to magnify us off the cliff if we're not careful. So really the meaning that I would like to call forth for humanity during this shift is changing what we value most, what our highest level of currency is as humans. And just imagine for a moment, if this wasn't such a crazy idea, that it was really, we looked at each other and said, boy, you are a special human being. You have a gift like no other. And how can we help you live that? Because we know that that thread in this tapestry of life is the most important thing. Because when we're on purpose and living our purpose, we have inner peace. And when more of us do it, we have world peace. And although we can be pretty messed up creatures at times, as being demonstrated often over and over again through history, when we're on purpose, man, we are unstoppable. And we have all of the solutions in the world that we need. They just need to be discovered, empowered, and amplified. And imagine if that system, and I will finish with this, implemented into our core structure of economics in GDP, because that is what drives everything, is incentive. And we cannot forget our world of capital, because that is the fuel on the fire of technology. Imagine for a moment if we moved from GDP to GD purpose, and it wasn't some soft, fluffy idea, but actually became one of the most important economic indicators or stock analyst tools, where Wall Street falls in love with it rather than thinks it's fluff. And so meaning and purpose at a time where we can all come together, when AI is going to continue to fuel the level of separation, not only of capital and wealth, but of attention, is a time for the calling. And I'm excited about having this conversation with all of you here today.
Thank you so much. This really gives us a very high level reference point from everything that we have shared so far. I would like to acknowledge some of the comments that were shared in the background, because I think we need to make sure that there are also other critical voices that need to be heard. But I also have some questions for you, and the questions that we can discuss amongst ourselves, which I think would be really good to have an exchange, so you are not all blocked off into a little screen squares, you know, mentally or visually. Marianne, thank you so much. One of the comments she has sent says, thanks, highly disagreeing with transcendence part. I think it is more important that it's transformation, not to trespass or pass over, not flying around intending to transcend in where we can fail down or hit ourselves, just as an example. And indeed, Marianne is confirming that independence and codependence are not the same as interdependence. This is, I think, what we have all confirmed. Alex Shenderov basically said, we loathe not ourselves, but each other, and we do so as a result of decades of anti-human propaganda. He's asking about how can we effectively counter the current xenophobia, cynicism, and global problem. There are so many. I think I think it would be safe if I responded on behalf of the panel that how I understood it is that we basically only can hate another if we don't feel safe inside ourselves and we don't really like our own being. This is a way of externalizing that force. Everybody's nodding, help me here, because we cannot have a full conversation on that. And there's another interesting comment that says, that is concerned about how we can actually impact conflict cessation, conflict transformation, conflict resolution, also from Marianne, and how we can actually remember not only issues with pandemia, as she has called it here, plandemia, and genocide, that these are things that we need to be highly aware in a way that I think has left us at a very high note, but how can we impact on the ground the world that we live in? Elena was mentioning Bulgaria, Lawrence is in USA, Alison is in Germany, Gary's in India, Stefan also in Germany, I am in Montenegro. This is a very good grounding comment that says, what are you each doing? What are we each doing on our ground where we are situated in our own context to send a signal to the world of what needs to be done? And also, how are we receiving in return the signals back from the world to refine our local solutions and to prototype them in a way that could serve all humanity? If we can do a speed run, it would be very helpful. And I will do the same direction. And if there is a moment, I would also like to share what I am prototyping. I started with introducing myself and initiatives that I'm leading here as a boundary bender. So I would love to hear first, Elena, you spoke of your institute. What are some of the ways in which you have expanded, not only attracting those that are attending the work that you do in the Institute to ennoble and emancipate their inner being, to improve the quality of their lives, but also what are some of the ways in which you're connecting, such as with World Academy or your own government or other alliances and associations to amplify your message and to converge your own social power?
Thank you. That's a great question, and I'll try to be very quick here. It is all about changing the narrative. And so I'm part of a large number of global initiatives, some of them initiated from the US, but really all over Europe and wider than that. And they are all working around a new narrative that has been spreading and that calls itself the unitive narrative. And from the unitive narrative, which actually shows through very current science how very interdependent and one we actually are, there are all kinds of practical projects that emerge. One that I'm particularly involved in with the US and Europe and globally is the Unitive Justice Project. And that's something very interesting to talk about in the Balkans, which is what I do, working with NGOs and working through the Institute and working with professional circles here. There is also unitive economics, unitive media. There is a number of very far-reaching unitive projects that I'm aware of and in varying degrees part of. And one that particularly inspires me is that scientists of every discipline have come together to build what they now call science of unitive love. And it is science. It is physics, it is biology, it is psychology, it is all the behavioral and biological sciences, and it's very serious. And recently, I'm actually working with a team of AI builders who are creating a program that will gather all the unitive data and reconfigures it through AI intelligence to answer all kinds of very concrete questions. For example, I'll be doing a youth summit in 3 weeks, in 3 days, I'm sorry, in Romania. And so I asked this software, this AI software, what do you think would be the most important aspects to emphasize for youth who come from all over the world to understand the unity of nature of reality? And this software gave me a beautiful 2-page syllabus, which I'm actually going to experiment with in Romania in 3 days. So this is one example. There's many I could share, but I wanted to say that really there are some very far-reaching and very practical, very down-to-earth unitive initiatives and community building initiatives. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, because we really need almost a 1-minute run to fix the world. I mean, we can definitely do it from the inside. But Stefan, please.
Okay. I was not prepared to give this personal comments on top of it. I will try to do it on an individual
What
level.
are you doing now, in other words? Feel free to share. You do so much in the world.
Give me 50 seconds. Okay. On an individual level, I'm initiated in several contemplative practices over the last 20 years. I'm a long-term practitioner. On an institutional level, I'm a medical director who's transforming a hospital chain into an integral medical institution where we integrate wisdom traditions in basic care. And on an institutional, international level, I've just finished my appointment at the German government board on finance, and I'm involved since 25 years in the link between finance and sustainability. So I have a lot to do, and it's exciting to be part of that transformation process. Thank you.
So, quick question for you, Stefan, then, because you're time efficient. How do you think all of these initiatives and all this work can be truly multiplied and can be scaled out and scaled up?
I'm much more humble in this field. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just trying to do my thing, right? Whenever there's a request, I'm responding to it. We have to treat thousands of patients here, right? I give 30, 40, 50 talks every year on finance and sustainability. And I have a 2-hour meditation practice every day. So I don't know how it's multiplying. Maybe you know, maybe someone in the audience knows. I'm just doing my thing. I'm far too introverted in order to constantly talk about these things, you know. I'm sorry.
Very, very good. Very good. I mean, this is already a contribution. And maybe one of my suggestions would be you and all of us are being, so to speak, harvested, or also, and two-way street harvesting AI right now. If we approach it with these questions, you just said we shouldn't be talking so much, but we certainly will be talking with AI. So if maybe we use AI to ask the good questions, but because of the quality of the human decision depends on the quality of questions we ask. Maybe that's the part of the public education that needs to be happening. What are you feeding AI? What are you feeding your own being? Right?
Yeah.
So, and what are you in return using that as food for? So, Alison, if we can be really brief to make sure that we make it and include as much insight as possible.
I'm going to be so brief that I'm actually going to pass on this, because we are very much in the architectural, structural phase, looking for partners, putting out content creation, and we've got International Director of Live Aid on board. So these are part of the building blocks in the backstage.
So let's make sure that the conditions for the party planning and this big event, let's call it a global Woodstock of the really good kind that needs to happen for all of us, that you are, getting us updated on how we can participate and how we can contribute to the global party. Lawrence, please.
Okay, so Alison, I'll bridge a little bit of yours, and I appreciate the. I think back to the late great. Many of you on this panel knew of her, Susan Davis, who's left us in body form. I remember when we were doing the future capital at the UN. She pulled me aside out of the way. She goes, "Lawrence, you really want to change the world?" I said, "Yes, Susan, I do." She said, "Throw a better party." So well done, Alison. That's also part of what we do at the Conscious Capital Foundation. So what we're up to is we are celebrating people's purpose who are making a difference in the world. We're also doing research and development around GD purpose, and I know I'll be collaborating with a lot of my fellows at the Academy on that work. The most, and of course, just completed a very, very big run on the book that's coming out called The World Doesn't Need You, which addresses this transformational shift that we are upon as humanity, which is in any great change is really a choice. It's a binary choice at this point, I think, for our species. And it's either we wake up and we really start working on a new purpose and a new meaning as a species and design our systems to incent that, because without that, it's just talk. Or we exponentially drive ourselves off a cliff. Because to your point and a lot of our panelists' points, AI is just mirroring what we have programmed as species. And it's showing us in massive exponential form who we are. So we can either choose to see that, or we can choose to keep our eyes closed and continue on this path. So the foundation and my work, everything I do is around that, along with my fellow beautiful humans at the World Academy and all the great people around the world that see this time as something very, very special and an amazing time to be alive. And my friend Stefan, my real answer, although you said it much quicker, is I really have no idea. I'm just doing my best and paying attention and aligning my purpose the best I can in the world to share at this important time.
Thank you so much. We're 2 minutes over time, but things are going over time, and I would love to maybe use additional 3 minutes max that, you know, we can wrap this up. How do you wrap this up? At least we have spoken about the initiatives that are taking off and will continue to grow in the world. So there's nothing to be wrapped up here. But the voices of the people in the background are important, and I will try briefly to mention these people, these presences with us in the collective intelligence space. Douglas was talking about that interdependence is not the same as intra-dependence, and that we really need to deepen our understanding. Apparently, Douglas, I'm interpreting you, but are all intra-cultural sense as intercultural sense as well. And the full consciousness and how we as humans are co-emergent with Earth. And this is why Susan was asking, I think, who was asking about how much time are we spending? Dana, I apologize, it was Dana. Susan Davis is with us. But Dana was asking, how much time do each of us spend in nature? How much time in silence, speaking to Stefan's point, to go into your inner landscape, and how do we recognize all our relations? Alex spoke about the importance of purpose. That speaks directly to Lawrence's point. Douglas again and some other people here and our friends were speaking about different resources and initiatives that have taken off before. I recommend, Heiner says, for your next years to check Unity and Diversity we did for Bertalanffy, 100 Years and Dialogue Among Civilizations, UN General Assembly 2001, initiated by Kofi Annan. Then I'm going to have to, many thanks to Lawrence again from somebody else, but with this, I just really wanted to bring in voices into collective intelligence, because it is really the way we feed the narrative and get validations back and forth. My comment here would also be for all of us to ask ourselves, first and foremost, what it is that we're feeding into collective intelligence from this perspective. Also to think of ways why there have been so many initiatives for so long that have not necessarily scaled out, that did give birth to organizations such as World Academy 65 years ago, but that we continually come to the crossroads of to be or not to be. And how is it that every evolutionary move and cycle requires certain sacrifices? Can those sacrifices not be any more human, but maybe symbolic sacrifices of certain outdated narratives, and how we can create new narratives to drive the evolutionary process in which we support each other in a complementary way, not in a conflictual way, grinding each other literally down into new matter and new mental states through conflict, but through complementarity. So these are some of the questions that I would like to kind of leave you with, and maybe point out to the initiative that I said I would love to mention to you briefly, that I'm prototyping in Montenegro, which is the culture of interbeing. With the first strategy for interculturalism and social cohesion that we gave birth to in December of 2024 here in Montenegro, at very difficult circumstances at the intersection of East, West, North, and South. Montenegro has become the first country in the world in which culture of interbeing is its public policy. Without going into the implications of what that is, and maybe at other panels I will be able to share the different facets of universal humanistic values that inform the culture of interbeing, it would be important to understand that maybe from every standpoint, from Stefan's meditative state, from Lawrence's boat, from Alison's planning the party like the good global friend that she wants to be, from Elena's connectors and weaving efforts and her groundedness in her institute, we are all sending a signal out. And how we can amplify that signal through the World Academy of Art and Science is the most significant question we can possibly ask now. As a group of friends, as a group of colleagues, as a group of co-creators that have met in 1960 and founded the World Academy, what will it take to scale out and scale up the mission of the World Academy together as a collective intelligence, as a collectivity from within and outside, to generate the culture of peace, social transformation that benefits us all, and a new culture of empathy, I would say, that Alison's party should launch. Thank you very much. Thank you for spending time together for this mental meditation, working meditation together, and let us continue burning bright and sending a positive signal out at the time that is really needed in the world. I'll see you in another panel and elsewhere around the globe. Thank you so much.